Hey, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Do you sometimes feel like you're living a double life? You know who is described in this week's Torah reading as living a double life? None other than Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, our teacher. On one hand, he is raised as a privileged prince of Egypt. He's raised in Beit Paro, in the house of Pharaoh, as a free man. On the other hand, he knows he's a Jew, and he knows his brothers and sisters are enslaved in the land of Egypt. And he's living and he's straddling that fence. And the way the Torah describes him in his youth is that he's somehow able to, I guess, live both lives. But you know, whenever we live a double life, there's always that moment that forces us to confront who we truly are and decide who we are. Because you see, until Moshe really decides who he is, we don't see him doing anything terribly significant. And it all comes to the fore when he goes out into the field and he sees a fellow Jew being beaten by an Egyptian. And the Torah tells us, Vayifen ko v'cho, he looked one way, he looked the other. Vayarki enish, he sees there's no man. Vayachat mitzri, he smites the Egyptian. Vayitmeneu b'chol, and he buries him in the sand. And my friend and colleague Rabbi Ari Berman once suggested that the Torah isn't just telling us, when it says he looked one way, he looked the other, make sure the coast is clear. Of course, that's true. But deeper, Moshe is looking within himself. Vayifen ko v'cho, he looks at one side, he sees the Egyptian within him. And then he looks at the other side, the Jew within him. Vayar ki ein ish, and he realizes there's no man. He realizes because he's on the fence, and he's not really choosing who to identify with. As an Egyptian or a Jew, he's really a nobody. He's got to decide. And so, Vayachat mitzri, he kills the Egyptian. He doesn't simply smite the Egyptian out there who is trying to kill his fellow Jew, but he destroys the Egyptian within him. Vayitzmenehu b'chol, and he buries him in the sand. And from that moment on, you see Moshe Rabbeinu doing great things. He sees two Jews fighting with each other, and he breaks up the fight. You see the incident with the Midianite shepherds who are harassing the daughters of Yitro, and he breaks up the fight. And then he ultimately redeems the Jewish people, but none of that happens until he decides who he is, until he gets off the fence and says, fundamentally, I'm a Jew. Right? We as Jews live in the United States, we live in Western culture, and we're really in it. But who are we fundamentally? And until we know who we are fundamentally, we can't do great things. Certainly not for our people, and certainly not for ourselves. We've got to get off the fence and identify with the person who we fundamentally believe we are. Once we do that, once we know who we are, we can then enjoy and participate in other people's and other cultures because it's coming from a place of strength and identity. So let's follow Moshe Rabbeinu's lead. Let's get off the fence. Let's stop living a double life and say fundamentally, I am a Jew and I'm proud. And as a proud Jew, I can participate and have relationships with my non-Jewish colleagues, whether it's professionally or otherwise. But I know I'm coming at it as a proud, identifiable Jew. And then, like Moshe, I can go on to do great things for myself and ultimately for the world. Shabbat Shalom.